Today we start another chapter of environmental studies. This is under the Calcutta University syllabus of CVAC-1, Environmental Studies, and today we are going to discuss rules and regulations of the environment. Hi and welcome to my channel Geography Made Easy. In these videos, we try to make difficult geographical topics easy. If you like my video, please share and subscribe to my channel for more such content on geography. I hope you leave a comment so that I get inspired to make more such videos. Let us start with understanding what is the rules and regulations which are there for the environment. We have to first understand that we are talking in the context of India, and we're talking about environmental rules in the context of Indian rules. So environmental rules and regulations in general, they play a huge part in protecting the different kinds of forests, plants and animals and habitats which are there in the country. So without these laws, it becomes difficult. Like certain, if there are no regulations, certain things go unnoticed, and things like poaching, things like pollution, they grow unchecked, felling of trees. So it is very important to have a set of rules and regulations which define exactly what comes under the Environmental Protection Acts. So, what are the benefits of these rules and regulations? They help in protection of the public health because they look into the pollution matters. They help in conserving natural resource. They help maintain biodiversity. They help in mitigating climate change and looking into global warming. They ensure that we practice sustainable development. They prevent environmental degradation and they enhance quality of life. All of that which we have discussed in the previous videos, we can achieve them with the help of the policies, the governmental interventions which are there in the forms of rules and. So what are the different types of rules and regulations which are there in India? The environmental rules and regulations, if we look at them very broadly, they can be divided into a number of types, and here we are just discussing the number of types of rules and regulations which are there. So they are the air quality regulations, the water quality regulations, waste management regulations, chemical safety regulations. So these are basically related to all the factories which are into manufacturing. The land use conservation regulations, so this is mostly the conservations which come into play when the government is trying to encroach upon land or anybody is trying to build something. Climate change regulations, this is a largely holistic regulations which are there, which look into the climate change aspect. Then we have the energy efficiency and renewable energy regulations, which talks about the energy aspects. Then we again have noise pollution. Again, this is related to factories and industries. Then finally, we have the environmental impact assessment regulation. This is, say for example, anything you want to build, you have to make sure that you do an environmental impact assessment, or environmental health has to be done of that particular area on which you are building, to assess whether it has any kind of species which are endangered and whether you can actually go and build there. Now of course we know that there is a lot of problems here, but we'll see that later. And we have biodiversity and habitat protection, so again forests and conservation, and this is linked with the environmental impact assessment regulation as well. Moving on, now we know that there are a lot of problems with the implementation of environmental rules and regulations, and we have already talked about that, because whenever we talk about the success stories, we need to understand that in India at least there are a lot of problems which are there with environmental regulations. And in this case here I've put a photo of red tapeism. So this is a representational photo of red tapeism, where the constitution, the Indian constitution, kind of gets bind up by these lot of red tapes, lot of bureaucratic channels through which it's not so easy to pass a rule and regulation. It's not easy, it's not easily defined, the laws can be twisted, and hence sometimes we see that the adverse parties, they benefit here with money. So we have corruption and political interference here, and this was shown, and red tapeism best. This was represented in a very current movie, and the photograph I put it here was Sheni, and this is there on Amazon Prime. If you have not watched it, I urge you to please go and watch this movie. A brilliant movie where Vidya Balan plays the role of a forest officer, and what she has to face when she tries to protect, conserve certain species of plants and animals in that particular area. And this is actually based on a true event. So more or less, this is something very much relatable. Then we have overpopulation and ignorance again. When a lot of people, in case of India, we have a huge amount of population that does affect how we are implementing our environmental rules. Sometimes a lot of people, there is man-animal conflict. So yes, that happens with overpopulation. There is lack of education, awareness, and ignorance. If I can just put all of these into one category. So there is this lack of understanding about how important environment is. There is lack of education, lack of awareness, and ignorance, or sometimes we tend to, just shut our eyes despite the fact that we are educated. So that is also there. Moving on, what are some more environmental rules problems of implementation? That is, there are weak enforcement mechanisms, the mechanisms through which these rules will be coming into place, the manpower or the machines, the technology is here weak, and that leads to fallacies. Then we have insufficient data and monitoring systems. Now, this is improving, and I must say that this is something which we are getting rid of with more and more geographic information system, more maps, more satellite images coming in. This gap is reducing, but this gap is still there. Lack of capacity and training, this is a fallacy on the part of the government, but this again can be overcome. Outdated and rigid laws, yes. Now a law which is existing in India from the British times, from the colonial period, makes no sense in the current world because things have changed and shifted. So that is also another problem. And in many cases we tend to neglect these rural and natural areas because they are not part of our current politics. Because here, when we are talking about rules and policies, a lot of political intervention comes in. The ruling party, all the vested interests, they all come into the picture. So that is also something which has to be understood, that that plays an important role. And here there is a positive picture, and I have put the photograph of elephant whisperers. And this documentary again is something which I would urge people to watch because this is based on true events, and it shows how conservation can be successful. We have a lot of conservation and environmental rules that have been successful in different parts of India, which are beautiful stories which we should be sharing. And this is one of them, and you should watch this. So moving on, we'll go into the environmental laws in India. What are the different kinds of laws which are present? Now, when I'm talking about environmental laws here, I would like to talk here. We have certain number of laws in the syllabus, and we are going to just talk about those laws. So the first one is the Wildlife Protection Act. Now, this act is given in details on the website, so you can have a look at it. But we will just look at what is the basic or the main gist of this particular act, which was passed in the year 1972. So this tries to define certain terms such as hunting, taxidermy, and wildlife so that you can protect the environment. So it puts in serious understandings, because this is one of the acts, earlier acts, and before that there was no hard and fast rule regarding, say, what do you understand by what is a wildlife, what is a wild animal, and how, what kind of animals should be stuffed. Like taxidermy is the art of stuffing animals, so you see them in the museums. So which animals can be stuffed? Can we kill animals and can we stuff them? What do we define as hunting? Because hunting before that was a legal thing. In pre-independence India, hunting was legal by the government of India. The colonial powers, they would practice hunting with the Maharajas, and we still see a lot of the remnants in different museums. But hunting was banned, and so definition of what we understand by hunting, these things were given properly. So this act has been amended 9 times, and there has been changes which has been made in what we define as wildlife and the amount of protection we can give to each and every species. Then we have the Forest Conservation Act. Now, this act was passed in the year 1980. Very significant. We can see that the 1970s brings in all these movements in the international forum, and we see acts coming into India also, regulations and rules being passed. So the Forest Conservation Act helped to conserve the country's forest, strictly restricts and regulates the de-reservation of forests or use of forest land for non-forest purpose. So basically the government here is defining what is known as forest and what are the different kinds of activities you can do and you cannot do inside the forest. Basically, the Forest Conservation Act, by this act, you cannot enter the forest without permission. You need permission, especially in a reserve forest. You need permission of the government to enter. So, certain vehicles, if you want to enter the forest and see, say you want to go into the Gir, you need to go through particular vehicles which have license. Not any vehicle can go there, and if you've done that, you will be heavily fined. Yeah, so this is the gist of this particular act. Then moving on, we have the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. Now this act was amended in 1988 and it was enacted in 1977. 10 years from its inaction, it was amended. So basically, this is about defining water and recognizing it as a resource and talking about how to prevent the control of pollution. So this act is coming under the Central Pollution Control Board, where all everything under this larger umbrella act comes, everything comes under this act. If we are looking at the different clean river action plans also, they come under the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. So this is the umbrella act which came much before. So understanding and talking about river or water, groundwater, surface water was what was defined in this act, and it has been amended also. So the last amendment was done in the year 2003. So you can be asked these questions as to amendments of these acts in which year, so for your MCQ, so you have to know that. Next, now we have the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. Again, another act coming under the CPCB, and this act was enacted or was introduced in 1981 and was amended in 1987. So again, this act is talking about what we can do to combat air pollution. And if you look at the details of this act online in the CPCB's Central Pollution Control Board's website, you can look at that. I'll put the link in the um, in the in the chat section and in the description, and you can have a look at this particular these acts as well. Moving on, we have the Environmental Protection Act. This act was introduced in the year 1986 with the objective of providing for the protection and improvement of the environment. So again, this is something similar to the previous acts where we are talking about, we're defining what is wildlife. Here also, this is a more holistic act talking about how we can protect the environment. So basically, again, it is talking about environmental pollution, how to tackle different kinds of environmental problems, and specifically those which are there in different parts of India. So very specified to India, and this act was amended in 1991. So Environmental Protection Act will go a little bit, it will talk about water conservation or reduction of pollution of water, air, and the other climate, everything. We are going to talk about that so that these things can be addressed under this Environmental Protection Act. Next is the Biodiversity Act. This is a comparatively a newer act. It was introduced in 2002, and it is India's attempt to realize the objectives which were brought about in United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity in 1992. This was a convention, and basically to define what is biodiversity, to define and discuss, to mark, to demarcate the biological hotspots, and to, of course, prevent the loss of biodiversity, to bring in strict laws so that the biological resources are conserved and the biodiversity is conserved in different parts. So this was the aim of this particular law, and this is the details, and we can look at that. This act, under this act we have the green tribunal, we have the red data book, which defines which species are endangered, which species are extinct. So it talks about a structured body with three bodies here which are talking about biodiversity. So we have the national biodiversity authority, state biodiversity authorities, and local level biodiversity committee. So each person, each committee is talking about how to conserve biodiversity. The act tries to actually preserve the natural uh, plants and animal species which are there living, which are indigenous to a particular place. And it's an important act because this act actually comes into place even in the urban areas, and a lot of times there has been seen activism has taken place because of this act. Next, moving on, we will talk about some of the international agreements that has happened. So we are going to talk about the different kind of agreements which have taken place, and these are some of the most significant ones. So the first one is the Montreal Protocol, and you have heard most likely about Montreal Protocol. So this particular protocol was passed in 19 came into force in 89 but passed in 87. This happened in 87, where because it was realized that ozone lower layer is getting depleted, so the countries came together, they signed a treaty to reduce CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons which are depleting the ozone. So it's a important, very important protocol which was signed, and this is a success story because we have seen that the ozone hole is slowly healing thanks to the efforts by the different nations, which shows that an international cooperation and agreement can be successful. Montreal Protocol is a good example. Next, moving on, we have the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol was an international treaty named after the Japanese city where it was adopted in the year 1997. So this particular act aims at reduction of greenhouse gases which are contributing to global warming. So 1997 onwards, this act has come into being after this protocol has been signed, and again from time and again people like different leaders, international leaders, they meet and they address this issue about reduction of their greenhouse gases so that the emissions can fall down, so that the levels, the global warming rates can go down. But again, a lot has to be achieved here, and there are a lot of like it is not a complete success story. So yes, we are still in a phase, actually we are in the phase right now where we are actually feeling the brunt of global warming. But yeah, I think we are not addressing the issue properly. We are looking into vested interests by each country, so that is a problem. Then moving on, we have again, now this is a broader term. We have a different climate negotiations which keep taking place from time to time, where we know that now the climate change is a big issue, and from time to time the different United Nations they meet for this climate change, to discuss about what can be done about climate change. So this is called the UNFCCC, United Nations Convention on Climate Change, and they meet and they talk about what can be done. And it started with Kyoto, and it has there has been a number of these negotiations, climate negotiations, where of course India has also participated and negotiated. And there is a lot of like there are debates where the developed nations are taxed, like they are told to cut down their emission more compared to developing nations. Because of our large population, we might look as if our emissions are high, but actually per capita emissions are low. But again, we also have a role to play in these emissions as well. Even if we have a high population, then that needs to be addressed. So for each country what is the problem and how we are contributing to global warming, to climate change, and how it can be addressed. These negotiations try to do a midway path of talking around these, but again they are not 100% successful. And finally, we have Convention on the Biological Diversity, from where I have talked about the particular act we have in India, where we are trying to recognize the different biological diversities and their importance. And we are trying to preserve and protect the existing biodiversity which is there, so that there is, in future, we have these species living and not becoming extinct. So the key document regarding again biological diversity preservation is sustainable development, which actually can address and help a lot of these issues. The convention was it happened in the, it's called the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. So if you get Earth Summit, please don't get confused. It's the same thing, conventional biological diversity, or sometimes called Earth Summit. It happened in Rio de Janeiro in 5th June 1992, and very very important, we need to know these dates for the MCQ exams. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write in the comment section. And if you're liking my video, please share and subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends so that they can also get benefited from these videos. And see you in the next video. Bye bye.